of Johann Lamont, and this is grouped with Amendment 41. Johann Lamont to move the Amendment 37 and speak to both amendments.
So is this Group 5?
This is Group 5, characteristic of transgender identity, Amendment number 37.
Okay. This amendment, group amendment, seeks to deal with groups that are covered by the characteristic of transgender identity in subsection 15(7). It removes subsection D and so removes cross-dressers from the scope of the bill. Amendment 41 is a consequential which removes the same group from the data collection provision. Section 58, subsections A to C, which cover female to male and male to female transgender people and those who are non-binary, are unaffected. The amendment would have the limited effect of removing people who occasionally cross-dress from the list of those covered by an aggravator based on prejudice and from the new stirring up offence. The existing criminal law protects everyone against attack. The question today is only which of the groups where we want to send a message, as some have put it, that hatred is especially serious and damaging. And I regret that earlier I was unable to persuade colleagues to use this bill to recognise the hatred, overwhelming scale of hatred experienced by women based on their sex. The bill also excludes hatred of those living in poverty, even though Brackadale acknowledged clear evidence of verbal abuse, harassment and physical assaults, particularly against homeless people. The bill excludes also groups such as goths, emos and punks, even though there is evidence, again, of these groups being targeted for serious offending, including at least one case of murder. While women, homeless people and goths have been rejected even in the face of evidence that they are targeted for offending based on prejudice, the Scottish Government has recently confirmed that it holds no evidence that cross-dressers experience this. That's despite their inclusion in the 2009 Act, having enabled the collection of data for over a decade. When the Minister said that the Equality Network had provided examples of this group being targeted for hate crime, it turned out that what he meant was entirely theoretical examples. Now, some arguments have been put forward for including this group to avoid leaving a loophole, and I will come back to these arguments in my closing comments. But in my strong view, the only reason to include any group in this legislation is because we accept it is merited in its own terms. It is not a commentary on the crime or the person of whom the crime is perpetrated against. We are making judgments here about who is included and who is not. So we should therefore be clear who the provision covers. The Cabinet Secretary has talked about, quote, a man who is not a trans woman but wears a dress for a drag performance. The Equality Network has brought up the example of a man dressing up for a night out at the Rocky Horror Show, and also of men who cross-dress for what they term, quote, emotional need. When women would be likely to be recognised as cross-dressers is obviously much less clear. In the letter I sent colleagues, I mentioned that when the existing legislation was introduced, the issue was at no point discussed, but I was prompted by hearing the Cabinet Secretary's arguments at stage 2, and I should like us to have now the proper debate we did not have in 2009. And that is, why do we believe hatred towards occasional cross-dressers should be covered in this bill, but not hatred towards all the other groups I have mentioned, but most especially women? And I should like to hear colleagues' answers to that.
Thank you, colleagues. Can I call John Lamont? Sorry, can I call John?